let's get into the discussion. Let's get into some examples and maybe it'll come to light. So the first one, I'll put it forward just because this is the one that I think in the brokers I talk to is the most used is a password manager. So, back in the day, I still think a lot of people do. Maybe you have an Excel spreadsheet, maybe you have just the same password you use everywhere, but more and more that's becoming not really usable because websites, I know Velocity, for example, is a good example of this. They make you change your password like every 30 days or something, like quite often. And so to be just updating that spreadsheet, maybe you could do that. That's a little less secure, but to use the same password is not available. So a password manager, what it does, it is basically, it's like that Excel sheet, but super secure, right? So it's a place you log in, you have everything there. You can load up, okay, for Google, this is my password. For Facebook, this is my password. For Filogics, this is my password. You load them all up. And the really great thing, and this is where it kind of comes into the browser, is that when you go to Filogics' homepage, the extension recognizes that. It says, hey, you're on Filogics. You saved this password for Filogics. Do you want to use it? And you kind of just hit click, boom, boom, copy pastes it in all for you. Pretty cool. It kind of, depending on the extension that you use, kind of auto populates it, and you're in, right? And we've been using those a bunch. We use a couple examples of different ones, but that's, I think, a starting point where I think a lot of the brokers we work with actually use that password manager. Is that what you see too, Mess?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of these extensions have something in common where they can pull information from the specific tab or push information into that specific tab, which is really handy. And so in the password example that you just said, it's smart enough to know you're on ABC, it can fill the password. If you go to a site that maybe you haven't been to in a while and you go sign in, it'll actually look and see if that password exists. And if it doesn't, it'll say, do you want to add this to the
Yeah, you
password
could add it
vault?
too.
Which
Right.
is
Yeah.
and then even further, what you can do with these things is the password ones is, and we do this a lot more now just because we're trying to be more security conscious, is you can get the password keeper to create your own password. And you
Mm,
can tell it,
yeah.
I want it 15 digits, and it'll make some friggin' thing you can't memorize,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is good, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah, there's a bunch of them out there, though.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
all right there. So yeah, you log into a new website too. Same idea, right? Okay, I have to think of a password. And now they say, okay, it's got to be 10 characters and it's got to have 3 exclamation marks. It's got to have numbers. And sometimes it's difficult if you're using the same password. Oh, I always use password 123, but oh, I need more things. These things are great. You basically can take those criteria, put it into these managers, and it spits out, hey, here's an example, saves it for you. You don't have to remember it, and it's just there for you. And yeah, the other great thing about it too is we're using this more and more too, is it's great for sharing too. So if you, for whatever
Yeah.
reason, you share your password with your spouse, with your team member, you don't have to send over. We always talk about how email is the least secure part of any part of your whole tech stack. Emails, don't send anything valuable over email because it's the least secure. So you get it into these services. So we use Zoho Vault. So use that as an example. I can load that up. I have that here. I have my repository. We have thousands of passwords now. And if you need to use one of my passwords, like this past week when I've been out, I can just click a button. It can send it to you instead of over email. It's much more secure. It's behind the firewall. It's all those great things. So yeah, I think it's a pretty top used one, and I think for good reason. I mean, it's pretty slick, and they've gotten pretty good with it.
Yeah. And a lot of them have mobile apps and all of that. They're not just browser extensions, but that's honestly the fastest and best way to use it. And we both probably use it 10 times a day,
Yeah, yeah.
honestly. So, yeah, those are honestly the biggest benefits. Just on the sharing piece, one of the cool things with these are you can actually share a password without actually sharing the password. Does that make sense? Where like you can share, say, hey, Jenna, you can log into my account, and she can hit the button in the browser extension to log in, but she never actually sees what the password is.
Stays
So
hidden.
that's,
It's only on her
yeah, yeah.
keyboard, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a cool one, especially when we onboard staff and stuff. And I mean, just in general, you may not want people to see the actual password and write it down or whatever.
But in
So they
theory,
can
Jenna
log
could
in.
copy and paste that into like a Word doc, though, right? Is that how it
I
works?
guess it does store in your
It
clipboard, is
must
what
be,
you're
right?
saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it must be. So
Uh,
maybe it's not as secure as I thought, but